You may remember almost a couple of years ago now, I made a video about a movie known as Zero Day, a found footage movie that is very well made, very realistic, and has stuck with me ever since I watched it. Well, recently I actually emailed Andre, one of the stars of the movie, and he was nice enough to sit down with me and actually have a conversation about Zero Day, some future projects, and a couple of other things. It was a great conversation. I am not an interviewer by any means, but Andre was very easy to talk to, and if you are a fan of Zero Day, I think you're definitely going to enjoy hearing him talk about it. I'm going to leave a link to Andre's YouTube channel and two videos specifically, a video he made about Zero Day and a short movie he created called DST. I recommend checking out both of them after this conversation and subscribing to his channel. But without further ado, here is my conversation with Andre. I hope you enjoy. First things first, just thank you for doing this. I mean, Zero Day has really
My
stuck with
pleasure.
me since I first saw it. It's a very, very unique movie, so I really appreciate it. Do you know the last time you kind of sat down and talked about it was?
So I got someone reached out, for the life of me I can't remember his name, but I know the channel's name. Um, they have a YouTube channel with a smaller sort of subscriber base, I think, than yours, but they were really keen on the movie. It was called Jiu-Jitsu Robot. It's a jiu-jitsu podcast or jiu-jitsu YouTube channel, and they just really liked the movie. So they were like, "Do you want to come on and talk about the movie?" And I was like, "Well, I don't do jiu-jitsu." And I
Yeah.
don't know anything about jujitsu. Why would I come on a jujitsu podcast? They're like, no, don't even worry about it. So we just talked about the movie for about 45 minutes or so. And that was maybe 2 years ago. So that's pretty much the last time anyone's really, I mean, I get Instagram messages daily, um, usually the same 5 or 10 questions over and over again. So I try to respond to those in due time. Sometimes it takes me 2 or 3 or 6 months to get back to people, but I try to respond, somewhat real time if I can. But yeah, that's probably about the last time there was like an actual proper sit down like deep dive.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So it's been a while. This is probably one of those questions you get asked on the daily. It's kind of just going back to the beginning of how you got the role
Mhm.
and things like that. I'm just interested to know the auditioning process and if there were other people you were competing against and things like that. But I'm also interested what did you know going into that role? Obviously, it's quite heavy. There's a lot going on. Like, how much were you actually told before you auditioned for it?
Yeah, so the biggest misconception I think is that we got scouted, that Cal and I just got scouted from like a high school or something, which is not what happened. He and I had both been doing classical Shakespeare acting for many years together. We grew up in a town called Stratford, Connecticut, which, as you well know, there's a Stratford, UK, Stratford upon Avon. And so those are sister cities. They each have dynamic like Shakespeare festival theaters. And the
Mhm.
American one closed in '89. And so throughout the '90s, there were various attempts to revive it. We were involved in that sort of revival attempt. We were students in the like acting academy there. So we did, all sorts of scene study and scene work together. We did Midsummer Night's Dream together. We did all sorts of different shows and stuff. So we had a really good dynamic in terms of sort of knowing each other's rhythms on stage and in like scene work and things like that. Um, and so there, at the time, it's probably a website now. It is a website now, but back then it was a paper magazine newspaper that came out every week called Backstage. And if you lived close enough to New York, which we did, we lived about an hour and a half outside of Manhattan. You could get it mailed to you. So it came out on Wednesday or Thursday. You'd get it in the mail on Thursday or Friday. And it was a bunch of industry news articles, gossip, stuff like that. But the back half of it generally was all casting notices. And there was one that was there. It was like two teenage boys for a coming of age story or something sort of innocuous and, nebulous like that. And I, packed my headshot into an envelope, dropped it in the mail, didn't think about it at all after that. And then eventually started an email correspondence with Ben, who'd said, "Hey, I got your headshot. We're going to be holding auditions in June." At this point, it was November, something like that, maybe.
Mhm.
Um, and so every once in a while, I'd get an email from him saying, like, "Hey, still interested? Why don't you come out for the audition?" Okay, great. But again, like, whatever. Um, and then the audition was coming up. So I said to my parents, "Hey, there's this audition. It's about 45 minutes away. They want us to come in on Sunday. I have to bring a friend, or they asked me to bring someone with me. I'm going to bring Cal. Can you do my driving?" Essentially, because I was like 15 or 16 at the time
Mhm.
and I didn't have my driver's license. And So my parents drove us up there. Ben and Chris were holding 2 days of auditions, Saturday and Sunday. I think they might have seen 30 or 40 people on the Saturday and maybe 30 or 40 on the Sunday. I want to say we were the last ones to audition on the Sunday. We might have been like second or third to last, but we were very, very close to the end. Um, and it was funny. They were doing it in like the meeting room of a train station. And so we got there, and if you've ever been to like auditions or anything, it's usually just long rows of people who kind of look exactly the same as each other because you're looking
Hmm.
for a type, right? So it's just going to be people who are just slight variations off of each other.
Yeah.
And we got there, and I don't think we really looked like anybody else. It was the audition pool was primarily from like fairly affluent areas of Connecticut. So there was sort of like I don't want to, be dismissive of anybody, but there was like the popped polo shirt kind of guys, which is not what we were and still aren't. So we just showed up and we each did a monologue. I did a Chekhov monologue, and I think I might have done like the prologue to Henry V or something like that. I honestly don't remember what Cal did. And then they had us just do some like scene improv stuff from the script. Um, we left. I want to say that day or the next day, we got a call from Ben saying, "Hey, I want you to put yourself on tape." And at that point, I think he might have given us the complete script. We knew going into it what the general concept was, but we didn't know any of the details. We knew school shooting movie, but like that's it. Um, and then we got the script. The wisdom and genius of 16-year-old boys walking around our public high school with this script in our hands, 200 pages of like we're gonna go shoot the school like dialogue, and just passing each other in the hall and being like, "Hey man, did you read this line where you say I want to fucking kill everybody?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, that's a good one. Okay, cool." Like no concept at the time of how stupid that was.
Hmm.
Um, and then eventually that a few days later we went to my house. We went in the basement. The tape is somewhere on the internet. I think if you find the making of featurette on YouTube, there's clips interspersed there of us doing that screen test. And yeah, that scene ended up being sort of the basement day before, night before sequence, like the suicide tape scene. And then
Hmm.
from there, I think we had to actually mail a physical VHS cassette, so it took a few days to get to him. And then pretty much from there, it was a done deal. He came and met with our parents, and from that point forward, pretty much until this day, Ben has just been a fixture in both of our lives ever since. Like the older brother, we never really asked for, but now we just have. Um, so yeah, yeah, that was the
And
process.
yeah, it's such an interesting role to get as your first role, especially like just going into it because it's so hands-on in a lot of ways. There seems to be a lot
Hmm.
of like improvising and actually like operating and holding the cameras yourselves and things that like you
Yeah.
wouldn't really expect from a normal typical first role. So what was that experience like? You get the role and now you're in it and they're kind of passing you the cameras or telling you to bounce off each other. Was that easy or was that something you had to kind of learn along the way?
So it's interesting when it's your first one, you don't know that that's not how it's normally done, right? You have no idea. So you're
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'm the camera operator. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Cal had done some television and commercial work, so he knew better, but I had no concept, no context for it. Um, the good thing about having done so much work together, I mean, we had known each other since middle school at that point, so we're talking about 4 or 5 years. Um, he and I knew each other's moves. Like, um, it, it's cliched, I guess, but like it's kind of like fighter pilots. Like I imagine, like
Hmm.
you're flying in close formation, you're used to everybody else's style, so when this guy goes left, you go left, and um, so when they said, okay, here's the setup for a scene, you know what the script says, but just go and do it. When you're improvising like that, and I don't know if you have like an improvisational background or anything like that, um, you go into it, and because you're so used to each other, oh, he's saying this, I'm going to set him up with this lead in so that he can pay this if it's comedy, if he can pay this joke off, or if he can hit this emotional note later, he can have this as a callback. We're going to just go back and forth. So it was very much like a dynamic situation like that against sort of the backdrop structure of having that script. So I would say the years that he and I had spent on stage and in class together, we were able to very easily and seamlessly fall into that rhythm. A lot of the dynamic that you see on screen is in part because we know each other for so many years. We knew how to interact in a way to get a certain reaction from each other, or how to lead someone from one point to the other. There are times when you're on stage and someone will skip pages in a scene. You're here and then they jump ahead by accident, and you're on stage in the middle of a show in front of 2, 3, however many hundreds of people. You've just skipped 5 pages of dialogue and exposition. You're like, well, shit, now how are we going to cover this? And you've just got to kind of work your way back through. And hopefully through that rehearsal process on stage, you know each other well enough that you can get back on track. And that's kind of what we had. So it's very easy in those situations to just kind of roll with it. And then as far as the camera operation is concerned, a lot of the time, and this is movie magic, I guess, you think it's Cal holding the camera, or you think it's me holding the camera, but it's actually Ben holding the camera in some circumstances. So, it looks like I'm handing Cal the camera or vice versa. But then what you don't see is me just go like this, and I'm now standing behind the lens, and Ben is holding it, pointing where he wants, but I'm talking to Cal. And so there were situations where those things were happening. It was completely seamless. And Ben is almost always there off camera. Mm-hmm. So you imagine the eeriness of the dialogue that's being done. You imagine like the gravity of the scenes that are being played. But then there's this third guy that you never see, just kind of there. Mm-hmm. In the car scenes, he's always in the back seat. You never see the back seat of that car because he's there. And so no matter what's happening with us, he calls cut, we stop, we get our direction, and we go right back into it. Having that third man there, it's not just the camera as the third character, but it's also this random guy directing us there. It's very, very helpful to kind of keep things on track and make sure the camera work is correct.
Is there any, like shots where you can see Ben, where he gets caught in a mirror or anything like that?
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. We made, I've never seen him. Now granted, okay, I haven't watched this movie in 22 years. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's there. I don't know. But I would swear, I mean, if you can see him anywhere in that movie, I would be gobsmacked, because he just worked so hard to make sure stuff like that didn't happen. And in the safety deposit box scenes, the box with all the tapes is actually the tapes that we shot. That was the movie. I think there was 36 hours of footage. So that's take after take after take, hours and hours of improv and just random unusable teenage garbage. But in there's obviously 90 minutes of movie, but imagine how many takes that he must have gone back and looked at the viewfinder and said like, oh shoot, you can see my shoulder or whatever. So yeah, I don't think he's in any of the scenes. He might be one of the guys who sets the crosses on fire at the end.
Oh, really?
I don't remember anymore. I wasn't there, so I don't know. I wanted to be there. They wouldn't let me. I wanted to be one of the guys who sets the crosses on fire, like with the hockey mask on or something.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was funny. But he wouldn't let me do it. He said my voice was too distinct. People would know immediately, like, wait, so they wouldn't let me be there.
Yeah. That'd be
also,
very
it's like grossly illegal what they did. So yeah, it's also not great.
Yeah, for a 16-year-old as well being there, I imagine. Yeah,
exactly.
Some safety hazards. But yeah, yes. You were talking about the dynamic that you and Cal had, and it's definitely very noticeable on camera. And something you mentioned was how you could maybe like kind of set up a joke and he could kind of land it. And I noticed in the director's commentary that you guys were kind of like talking about oh, this got a laugh or that got a laugh. There was kind of this like there was this slight focus on the moments that would be funny. And if you explained this movie to like a random person and you said you might get a couple laughs on along the way, I don't think they would believe you. But it is when you watch the movie, it is like this necessity to make these characters likable and have these like comedic moments. And is that something you were focused on while you were shooting? Like, let's try and get a laugh here, let's try and be get a laugh here, or was that just like a product of being kind of silly teenagers and wanting to make each other laugh?
I think a lot of it is just being silly teenagers and having done some of the same stuff over and over again. Um, and because of the informality of the structure, it really was just the three of us, a 26-year-old and two teenagers, for most of that summer, just driving around, goofing around, while making this very, very serious thing. And so you're contrasting like the respect you have for the gravity of the material against the sort of mundanity of everyday grinding through this thing. Eventually, you're going to start to develop some very dark humor, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, like there are things you're going to do, like when the Andre character, pantomimes the safety deposit box being his penis because he's a stupid teenager. We thought that was hilarious because we were stupid teenagers. Um, but moments like that are important to the structure of the horror aspect of the film because in my mind, if they come in and they're just doing these big Shakespearean monologues about, the state of fairness or evil or, whatever, um, they're not going to engage the audience. It's not going to be human. And here, the horror is in the pivot point of the humanity turning into inhumanity and watching these kids that everyone thinks are normal and like psychologically well adjusted, and you know that there's this thing looming in the background and you don't know, are they going to do it, are they not going to do it? They seem so nice, he was so funny just two scenes ago, surely someone who's that charming isn't going to. And then when they do, I think that's how the horror and the um tension gets triggered, is by having that duality, I guess. And I don't want to get too like, literary criticism jargony here, but like that's where it comes from, is that pivot from normal guy. Everyone always says, oh, the serial killer, he was so nice, he was so quiet, he was just like an average guy next door, to like dismembering people or something. That's the scary part. Yes, obviously the violence and the death and the destruction are all terrible results of that. But I think the real thing that unsettles people to this day is the not knowing and the uncertainty of who is sitting next to you and whether they're capable of something today you wouldn't have thought them capable of yesterday. Um, when we did our first screening in Manhattan, one of my I had just graduated from high school, and one of my teachers came to the screening, um, and he straight up said to my parents afterwards, like, if I didn't know him already, I wouldn't want him in my class. Like,
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't take him as a student. But I know, like, I was around listening to him talk about how this whole process was coming together. So, like, but even he thought, like, no, fuck this kid. No, I'm out. I'm done. And I'm sorry for the language. I don't know if you're going for like a G rating on the video or
Oh,
something. I
that's
don't know.
that's okay.
With
Yeah,
this
no,
movie, maybe not likely
yeah,
to
yeah,
happen. But
probably, yeah. But that's funny. That's kind of a compliment. I mean, from your teacher in a lot of respects.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's really interesting. And you were talking about, and that's a perfect description. What I felt watching Zero Day as well is that there is this likability and this lightness to it, and it does really feel like two teenagers kind of goofing around. And something that I talked about in the video I made was this the scene where you guys egg the bullies class or
yeah,
his house, yeah, and you guys
yeah.
run away like it's the worst thing you've ever done, and you're having like an adrenaline rush. And that's what you talked about there with this kind of, are they going to do it? That was like a big moment of, I don't think they're going to do it if they're making this big a deal out of a relatively small
Right.
act of rebellion. Was that also a conscious choice to build up as you guys kind of slowly do these more it gets a little more sinister, or was that just kind of like natural?
Yeah, I think so. In the script, if I remember correctly, because again, it's been a very long time since I've even looked at it. it was structured around the notion of them having these missions that they were going to go on that would escalate in severity and gravity over time. And so I think, yeah, it started off as fairly benign. I think the very first one that we shot didn't actually make it into the movie, and it was just going to the mall and buying their outfits. And
Oh,
so
yes.
one of the very first things we ever shot was at a mall in upstate New York. We walked around with a camcorder and shot in a mall and like just improv for, I don't know, 2 hours or something, and went to some random department store and we're like looking at t-shirts, or went to the Salvation Army or Goodwill or something like that. Um, so yeah, the opening scene of the movie was almost just two kids shopping.
Hmm.
Um, is it the opening scene of the movie? Is that
Uh,
a scene in the movie now? I can't remember anymore if that got cut.
the opening scene is outside the school. And you do the declaration,
Okay. Yeah.
and then you
So,
show bullets or fireworks or something like that in your closet. I think that's the
oh, then it
first
goes
scene.
straight to Fourth of July. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because that same weekend, we started shooting the Fourth of July weekend, and now my memory's a little hazy because this was 24 years ago. Um, we went up to upstate New York. That was Ben's family's lake house that we were staying at. And it was like the Friday or Saturday we did the mall stuff, the shopping scenes. And then the next day was hanging out at the lake house doing dumb stuff with fireworks, like literally legitimately just playing with fireworks all day. And we were like, oh, we should film some of this. And then we did, and that's how I made it into the movie. Um, the whole war declaration thing at night with the night vision lens, that was always supposed to be in there, but a lot of it was just making little men out of Play-Doh and then sticking a firecracker in them and watching them explode. Like
Hmm.
I'm not kidding. We were just like dumb teenagers
Yeah.
for a lot of that. And so yeah, the missions got progressively more sinister, um, as sort of an escalating tension element, and then eventually like they steal Chris's guns, and they're at that point they're committed. Um, so yeah, I think that was definitely a conscious choice. As far as the intensity of like the adrenaline rush of them like doing this, this crime of egging the house, I think that's a really good observation that like it almost seems to invalidate their premise to say like really if this is what's really giving you a rush, then maybe mass murder is beyond your scope.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's ever pointed that out before, so yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Thank you. Yeah, it is something I noticed because and it goes into what you're saying that these things happen behind closed doors, or and like if you saw a teenager, commit like a very small act of vandalism and kind of be very trepidatious and scared of that, yeah, the last thing on your mind would be mass murder and things like that. You'd
Yes.
be thinking maybe they'll shoplift or something next, but your
Right.
brain doesn't go to those extremes. But yeah, you talked about like obviously you have to respect the kind of the weight and the gravity of what you're doing whilst also having this likability and these kind of comedic factors. And obviously, Zero Day is not a shot to shot remake of any specific real life event, but there are parallels with like Columbine and the basement tapes and
Yeah.
things of that nature. Going into it, did you have to study any of these real life events to kind of get into that mind state, like any manuscripts or journals, or was it just kind of it was already a cultural thing and you kind of knew what you were getting into?
So it's important to think back. We Ben wrote this movie in 2000. No, maybe 99, 2000. So Columbine happened in April of 99.
Mhm.
We started shooting this in July of 2001. So a year and a half ish later. Um, so, the basement tapes, I don't think they'd even been released at that point. There was very little that was known. Pretty much it was let's blame video games, Marilyn Manson, and anybody else that is, in that sort of music, pop culture scene. The Dave Cullen book had not come out yet. Um, all of the sort of releases of information, revelations from the sheriff's department, police department, all that stuff that now like permeates every second true crime podcast, um, just wasn't out. That information did not exist. So all we really had to go on was, oh, these boys were part of something called the Trench Coat Mafia. They liked the Matrix. It was all sort of vapid, superficial analysis like that. or at least that was what was on my radar at the time. And so as we read the script, and kind of started accepting that, okay, we were going to do this. I personally, I made a conscious decision, like, I'm not going to become a student of these events. I don't want to know what all these other, individuals were doing, thinking, or saying. I'm going to take the script as it was given to me. I'm going to build a character around the script that was there. It's not going to help me to know how other people played Batman. It's not going to help me to know how other people did Hamlet. Just let me focus on this character, what's in the script, and what am I going to bring to this to make it as realistic and as simultaneously likable and sinister as possible. And let the chips fall where they may. It also bears mentioning that this was 2001, July of 2001. We were on the cusp of some very bad things happening later that year. And then from that point forward, what is it? A significant mass shooting every 12, 18 months. Those events have only gotten more common and more horrific as time has gone on. And so what seems very much in the consciousness now of understanding or attempting to understand the psychology of mass shooters, talking about a mental health discussion, all of that stuff, old man Andre here, that just wasn't around back in our day. Like in 2001, that wasn't a thing. These were two crazy kids who did a thing. It was horrible. Hopefully it never happens again. We didn't have any idea of what was coming in terms of the frequency of these types of events. So no, I didn't really do any kind of research in that regard. And as far as we were concerned, this was not Columbine the movie. This was our own thing about our own characters. And they were just doing the thing that seemed most logical at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and it does stand on its own because people might kind of try and relate it to actual real life events, but when you watch it, by the end, you do feel like you've watched an individual kind of piece. So I think you definitely achieved that.
Thank you.
When I emailed after I initially emailed you, you were talking about how kind of wild it was to see the video and the concentrated number of like Zero Day fans all in one place.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I have to say the same. It was kind of the same for me because I went into making the video like, let me try and show this like niche, cool video to hopefully a bigger audience. But then the comments were all kind of like, oh, I love this movie. I'm already such a big fan. And I feel like I exposed myself to this very passionate, like loyal fan base that have been existing for years that kind of went under my radar. And I feel like 20 years after 0 Days released, it's kind of bigger than it's ever been. And do you feel like that's kind of a cultural thing, or maybe it's like the aesthetic of the movie, or is there another reason entirely that it's kind of become this cult classic?
Yeah, I mean, so yes, to echo what you said, I got your email. I was like, okay, that's very nice. Someone made a video about our movie. Okay, cool. Oh, you included the link. Okay, great. Well, I'll click on it. And I was like, holy shit. First of all, 600,000 subscribers or something. So like amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
600,000 views on that video. I was like, who the is watching? Who are these people that are watching a video about our movie? That's probably more people. I would have guessed more people than had ever even seen the movie. And then to see 700 odd comments going down and scrolling through and just seeing like, love this movie. These guys are great, blah, 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 all of this stuff. I sent it to Ben and Cal and was like, can you believe this? Like, how did we not know about this? So, I mean, thank you for shining like a huge spotlight on it with your audience and your reach. I think, sadly, I think the reason that the movie still resonates is because it's still relevant. And the humanitarian side of me wishes it wasn't relevant anymore. I wish that teenagers didn't have to do active shooter drills in school. I wish that bulletproof backpacks were not a thing, but you can buy those. So I think that in a world where there is violent uncertainty and a complete lack of action on the part of American government, schools, et cetera, to do absolutely anything meaningful about curtailing that type of violence, young people specifically who are essentially the ones who are at most risk because of it, they're going to go looking for explanations or answers or a touch point anywhere they possibly can. And then, again, I'm going to sound like an old man here, but you've got TikTok now, you've got, Instagram to probably a lesser degree, you've got who knows what social apps that I don't even know about because I'm 40 years old.
Mhm.
And things get broken down into clips, things get shared. Young people see, oh, what is this clip from? And then the algorithm starts feeding them more. And the next thing you know, they're watching your video or they're watching the movie itself. And unfortunately, it speaks to an element of their lived existence that still hasn't been addressed or resolved in any meaningful way. So, it's not good for me, obviously, but like the fact that the movie lives on is nice for us because it keeps finding an audience and it's validation of an artistic effort that we undertook. But I don't know, man. I wish we didn't live in a world where it still resonated with people. I wish it was something that people could look back on sort of anthropologically and say, "Oh, wasn't that a wild time?" But
Mm.
sadly, that's not the case.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I hope it can become kind of a time capsule of a like, oh, I can't believe this used to
Well,
happen
yeah,
kind of thing.
wouldn't
Because
it
I
be
do,
nice?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. Because I do say it in the video. I think this is kind of one of the best representations of it's realistic. It's not overdone. It's not like dramatic for the sake of it. Like you see in a lot of other TV shows or movies, they turn them into like these kind of like almost romanticized villains or something like that. And I feel like Zero Day
Mhm.
was kind of the best representation in a realistic kind of way. And I think
Oh, thank you.
that's probably why it's gotten this kind of cult audience and everything like that. I remember in the video you made, you talk about how kind of niche it was at the time, going into Best Buy and buying a couple cameras and making a full feature movie. Today, that might be something that is kind of normal with things like YouTube and things like that.
Mhm.
But YouTube didn't even exist when this movie was made. And in a lot of ways, you might be biased here. I personally agree with the idea, but do you think it was kind of ahead of its time in a lot of notions, like the being released in 2002, three?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people had made movies on a very low budget before. I think the thing that Ben locked in on was that the found footage style can be used very effectively in certain circumstances, Blair Witch, so on and so forth. Um, but yeah, I think when you look at a lot of movies now, like Steven Soderbergh will make it a point of shooting a movie on an iPhone, and you have to wonder, like, was this just because he wanted to say that he shot a movie on an iPhone because it's like a marketing gimmick or something? Um, but the cameras available now are just so good that you genuinely, if you're lighting it properly, there's no reason why you couldn't use Filmic Pro on an iPhone and get beautiful 4K or better footage. I think that the thing that we were maybe a little bit ahead of the curve on is just the roll up your sleeves and do it yourself concept.
Hmm.
Even something like Clerks, if you want to go back to the early 90s, um, Kevin Smith shot that movie on film, on black and white film, and it cost $30,000 to make, and it was probably primarily spending it on film.
Hmm.
So the idea that you could use digital tapes, which is what we had, and roll up your sleeves and say, okay, we're just going to make it and get it out there. Um, I think we were maybe on the cusp of that next wave of it happening in the digital era versus like the Robert Rodriguez kind of Quentin Tarantino, Kevin Smith generation of like we've got to shoot on film because nothing else exists. Um,
Hmm.
and now, geez, I mean, you look at anybody with a halfway decent MacBook and an iPhone, and they can shoot an entire feature with their friends or their colleagues or social circle, and it's going to look a million times better than anything we did. It's probably going to look better than most studio movies from the 80s.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think that uh, kids these days have it so much better. What can I say?
Yeah, I think that's something that you guys played to your strengths as well. You took the kind of limited resources you had and you made this like this aesthetic that was really, really unique and felt really natural and felt like home videos as well. And I think that's really
Yeah.
I talked about a time capsule. It feels like in some regards it is because it is taking you back to this early 2000s kind of aesthetic that I feel like a lot of people try to emulate that now sometimes in there with the things that they do, and they actually have to pay more money almost to get this thing that you guys got
Mhm.
as a product of not having the resources. So I think it kind of worked
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. It kind of worked in its favor. Yeah, I wrote this down actually, but you kind of answered it there. I was going to say, how much are you still talking to Ben and Calvin? Do you guys have like a group chat or something like that?
Yeah, we do. We have a three-way group chat. We have been talking about stuff to shoot next summer. So that conversation is ongoing. They were both collaborators on the short I did a few years ago, right before COVID. We shot it the weekend before the US COVID shutdowns.
Mm.
And we were all making jokes like, "Oh yeah, a pandemic's coming," and then it actually like legitimately did come like 5 days later. Um, so and I'll plug that. It's called DST. It's on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, sounds
Um,
good.
but I mean, Cal DP'd my short and produced it. Ben and Cal both produced it. I was in it and also sort of half directing. I set everything up before the shoot, and sort of did the auditions and did all of the stuff. And then the days that we were there, Ben was behind the camera directing the performances. So it was a really good mix of sort of like producer, director, shared responsibilities. We worked really well together. We've known each other 20 odd years and have been through a very, very specific and singular experience together. So um, that dynamic exists. Nobody makes me madder than Ben Cochio. I
Hmm.
will say it. He infuriates me all the time, but in a good way. That friction usually leads to good places. And so we have two concepts that we're in the middle of working out story on, that we are pretty intent on shooting one of them next summer. Um, and there's a feature separate from that that I've written that they've been really great about doing notes and stuff on. Um, and there's a short version and a feature version. I was hoping to be able to package the money to do the feature, but it looks like that's not going to happen. So we might just end up shooting the short at some point. But right now, the target is next summer to shoot a feature. So we'll see. I mean, it's been 20 odd years. So we don't exactly have the wind in our sails in terms of like, building a hype machine.
Hmm.
But it would be really fun to do again. And I think we have a pretty fun idea of what to do. So
That would be great. Yeah, and it would be the three of you, you two starring and Ben writing and directing, or you'd be kind of.
we haven't figured that part out yet. We haven't
Oh, okay,
figured
yeah.
that part out yet. Cal is a very accomplished, very talented director of photography, director, and writer in his own right
Hmm.
now. So in terms of the actual screenwriting, it would probably be primarily those two. I'm very good at plot construction, but they are much better at sort of tension building and dialogue and things. So we'd work out the story together and then work on writing it together. But I would probably say they would be like the two lead writers, just because they have vastly more experience. Cal's an AFI master's graduate, and so like he's obviously very well trained, very very knowledgeable about these things. Um, and my life went in a slightly different direction, so I'm kind of trying to veer back towards the more artistic elements,
Mm.
both through like random YouTube stuff, but then also some of the more narrative content. So we'll see what happens. Money, as you said, ultimately dictates a lot of things, and we're all in a position now where we can put in some of our own money, um, and hopefully it would be enough to get a feature going again, which would be great fun.
Yeah, that'd be very exciting. I'd love to see that if that happens. That'd be really good.
Yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned the YouTube channel there. I know you haven't posted for a while, but do you have plans to kind of bring it back or kind of in a bigger capacity?
Thinking about it, I have a theme, a niche, an angle that I'd like to pursue, but it really does come down to time. And as you know, like even a 10-minute video takes you, 2, 3 days to do, and it's like where do you find the time for that, and how many days does it take you to actually complete that? If you're talking about 3 times 8 hours of work or something, okay, those 8 hours get broken up over how many days and weeks. So it's not always realistic, unfortunately, with some other obligations. But I would like to do that, and it is constantly on my mind. You know, those are skills that degrade over time, as you well know. If you don't use Premiere for a few months, the next thing you know, your fingers just don't work on the keyboard the way that they used to. Your
Yeah.
shortcuts don't come as naturally, and so I would like to get back to that. It's just a matter of like not finding the time; it's a matter of creating the time and like clearing other things off the board. So I need to get more serious about that if I was going to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I'd be excited to see it. Anyways, I'll link below the
Mm.
0 day questions answered and the short movie as well. I'll make sure to leave
Thanks. Yeah,
those down below, and I recommend
I
people
appreciate
go
it.
check them
Really
out.
appreciate it.
That's pretty much all the questions I have, man. I've really really enjoyed this conversation. Like I said, 0 Day was
Yeah, me too.
it's really stuck with me ever since I saw it. I feel like more than almost any movie in the last kind of 5-10 years.
Wow.
As one of, yeah, it's just really, it's so unique in its own kind of right, and it's been yeah, definitely stuck in my head, and I that's why I felt so inclined to make that video about it. And yeah, I think, I called it the scariest movie you haven't seen on the YouTube video, but YouTube clickbait.
Yeah.
But I do think that is kind of true for a lot of people, that they don't realize what they're missing out on. So if anybody for some reason has made it this far into the conversation and hasn't seen the movie, I do recommend you watch it. But I don't think there's going to be too many people who overlap there.
Yeah, it seems. Yeah, it
That
seems
would
like they,
be,
by now
yeah.
they. Yeah.
If you are the one person who's 45 minutes into this conversation and somehow hasn't seen the movie, then I recommend go watch it or watch it again. But yeah, thank you very much, man. And yeah, I appreciate it.
My
It's been
pleasure,
a
man. My
great
pleasure.
conversation.
Thank you.
Uh,
Yeah, I was really happy that you reached out, and this was really fun. And yeah, just let me know when you post it, and I'll share it out as much as I can. I don't quite have the reach that you do, but certainly would love to amplify anything I can. And this was super fun. I really like. I said it before, and I'll say it again. Like I cannot articulate the surprise that I felt when I saw the level of audience interaction on this. So, also as a side note, thank you to everybody who's kept the movie alive and is watching it. And I was trying to encourage folks when they message me on Instagram, you know, go make your own stuff, go
mhm.
make your own videos, go make your own reels, go make your own. People draw stuff and they send it to me. Just keep creating artistic stuff. Take your example and go out and do analysis on other people's stuff. Just keep making stuff. That's the way that things ultimately get better, is through creativity and self-expression. So yeah,
That's a
thanks a lot for
great way
having
to
me. I
sign
appreciate
off.
it.
No worries at all. It's been a pleasure, man.
Perfect.